to Vassals of Kingsgrave. I'm Kevin, NuncleKevin on the forums, and today we'll be discussing Sword of Destiny, Andrzej Sapkowski's second installment in the Witcher series. We'll be talking about the second trio of short stories, as we've already discussed the first, and before entering the novel proper, with Blood of Elves on the next installment. Today I'm joined by...
Hi, I'm Michal, Inkasrain on the forums.
Hey guys, this is Paul, SerDinnerRoll on the forums.
Hey guys, it's Bina 007 on the forums.
Hey, I'm David.
Hello, I'm Bing, Shoeshiner on the forums.
Hi everyone, it's Mary and Nymeria on the forums.
We've finished the second book, made it through the all read now. The second half of the short stories, A Little Sacrifice, Sword of Destiny, and something more. Do we want to start with general impressions of these stories compared to the other half of this book or the prior book, The Last Wish?
I think a newbie should go first.
Yay, I'm going. So it's it's on. I'm into it. I'm impatient to get into the books. Actually, the novels. These three stories were just compelling, and I'm loving the new characters that we've met. They're also more emotionally heavy. Like we have characters dying. We have wars. We have so it's more compelling, more in a way more realistic. It's less removed than the first series, the first stories. So I liked it, and I'm happy to have stuck to this point.
Yeah,
Are we gonna do ratings? Are we doing ratings or no?
Yeah, are we doing ratings?
Yeah, let's do ratings.
Okay.
We did Golden Dragons last time.
How many lost princesses in the forest?
Yeah,
I was going to say
that might
how
be a
many
little
Veltanes
too human trafficky for this.
Oh, yeah.
But then again,
That's what the Druids are doing.
Out of how many flashbacks?
yeah, how many flashbacks?
There we go.
Well, I'm gonna say 4 out of 5 flashbacks. I really loved it, but still 4 because I'm still not a huge fan of short stories in general. But 4 out of 5, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna vote that us newbies we all go first here. So I think I agree with 4 out of 5. I think that the stories all got way tighter. They seem to have the right amount of characters. Generally, there's somewhere between 3 and 6 characters in each story that really do anything, as opposed to what felt like dozens in some of the others. So I thought they really tightened up with these stories, and there wasn't just sort of that lull that I think I got with some of the prior ones about 30 or 40 pages in. So I definitely enjoyed it. A lot of action, good philosophical and moral moments that I think give you a hint sort of what I don't want to say necessarily the theme of the whole series is, because I don't know that yet, but sort of give you a hint on how the author feels about the world he's created and all the bad things that are happening. So I enjoyed that. I agree, 4 flashbacks out of 5, which is up for me because I think I was in maybe the 3s before. So David, I think that puts you next.
I'll continue the trend of 4 flashbacks out of 5. I liked it. A lot of stuff happened. Some of it actually seemed pretty relevant to the main storyline, especially last story or 2 there. I was a little surprised to see major events like war and some deaths happen off camera. I'll be interested to see where it goes from there. I'm in. He seems to be getting his footing here, so it seems like Sapkowski got an idea of what he main story, and let's do it.
Bina is technically a first-time reader. I forget because she got ahead of us. That was shaming.
The only reason I got ahead is because I really felt that these last 3 stories in particular, the last one piqued my interest so much that I couldn't not go on to the first full book, the first novel. So I'd give the back end, the final 3 stories, probably a 4.5. And sneak peek, I'd give the first novel a 5. I mean, I just think it's really, like people have said, it's coalescing, it's getting tighter, and it's increasingly whetting your appetite for the main story. So I really, really enjoyed it.
All right.
Yeah, I really like this stuff. I there's stuff that annoys me. There's like little comments about women or whatever. But I think these are 3 really strong emotional stories, and they give you a really good insight into Geralt as a character, and the way he regards people, the way he regards his life. And I think it picks up very much from what we were talking about last time, which is like a certain aimlessness and lack of purpose on the character's part, or Geralt specifically. And this is really, I feel like Sapkowski actively tackling that and giving us a lot of information, a lot of character information, not just like world building information, because like I don't really care about world building information. And yeah, I think there's definitely parts in these stories that really kind of make me sit back and like think about them, and some lines about humanity or about destiny or about people just interacting with each other, that I find really intense. And the last story especially is like finding out off screen what happens to a lot of the characters you've met is quite a punch, I think. Also, big strong man with little sweet girl. Or not sweet. She's not sweet. She's a little rascal.
So far,
I was going to say.
It's basically every Dwayne The Rock Johnson film, isn't it? And I'm here for it.
Yes, it's also, it gives me like big, in reverse chronology, but like very intense Baby Yoda Mandalorian vibes. And I just love that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I would also give these like a 4 out of 5. Specifically as compared to the other short stories, because I think like out of these 3, the last 2 are kind of, I would say, more necessary reading if you're gonna just do the regular series and don't want to do the short stories, because I definitely say these 2, the one where Geralt first meets Yennefer, forget what that one's, I think The Last Wish, and the one where he attends the banquet with Queen Calanthe and all that. I think those would be the 4, if you had to narrow someone down to just 4 of the short stories before reading the main series, those are the ones you would want them to read first. But yeah, these are definitely, I would say, more interesting of the short stories because they ramp us up for the actual main series with their new edition of Ciri, with Sword of Destiny, in that you actually start to see Geralt actually beginning to kind of have this, because before now, he's just been a wanderer. All these short stories have been kind of just scattered all over the place. Some have been very random, and now we're actually starting to see kind of an actual journey taking place starting in these short stories. And you just really learn to love Ciri. And you see some of the favorite characters pop up. Dandelion shows up because obviously somehow he gets stuck in the middle of everything. But yeah, these are definitely, I think, the short stories that actually started to get me more into the Witcher series. When I first started, I was like, okay, these short stories are all right. But once we actually started to get into the plot of what the series is going to be about, that definitely kind of just sold me on it.
Yeah, I have to say that I sort of have to split these 3 up again in the sense that I would give Little Sacrifice probably a 4. It's a really good standalone story, and I think the character Essie Devon is actually really, really strong compared to all the other sort of, you can say, short story only characters that we've had encountered before. And I would basically consider the last 2 stories basically part of the main plot of the novels, essentially. You kind of need to read them if you want to start the main plot of the main novels, I feel like. And Sword of Destiny is probably one of my favorite story out of the entire books. But so I would probably give the last 2 probably 4.5 to 5. And something more just gut punch for most of it. And finally, everything finally sums up in a nice way. I would have to say Ciri is probably my favorite fantasy character of all time. So you can
wow.
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, so
That makes me really excited for the rest of the books because I already really love her, and now it's like, wow, what else is going to happen?
yeah, and
Spoiler, a lot.
a lot, yeah. The
Some good,
novels,
a lot of it bad.
a lot of it bad, yeah. But like the novels revolve around her a lot more than it revolves around Geralt. That's all I have to say going forward.
Geralt is the most famous, I think, secondary character we kind of learn about because of how the series is more just about Ciri.
In these books and in Witcher 3, the video game.
Well, that's good because I was thinking the other day about how I'm not sure I could read a whole series if it's tightly focused on Geralt. That I would probably get pretty tired of him. So I feel like there's a lot more room for growth in different directions with Ciri.
Yeah, I know, but I will say that these, we made you all read them all, obviously, but I think people really need to read basically, I guess, the Witcher story just to start things off. They need to read A Question of Price, maybe, which is the one that takes place in Sintra, maybe The Last Wish, depending, and then these three stories, and and they're essential to getting to know just the people, and more importantly, I think that the depth of themes that Sapkowski is really interested in, and I think you kind of get what makes these stories stand out, particularly as you start to understand why he's writing them. They're not just like fun or not fun, depending on how you feel, fantasy stories. They really have things to say and important commentary on reality and his own world. So
agreed. Well, I think we're ready to hop into the individual stories. So, Michal, you had the review for A Little Sacrifice.
Yes, I am going to read from the Wikipedia because honestly, stuff's busy. I don't have time to write my own.
And that's what the wiki's for.
Exactly. So, A Little Sacrifice. Geralt helps Duke Aglaval propose to his lover, the mermaid Shianaz. The proposal is unsuccessful because neither party agrees to transform themselves to live with the other, which results in Aglaval refusing to pay Geralt. By the way, commentary, Aglaval sucks. Yeah. He meets up with Dandelion, who is hired to play second at a local betrothal. The other bard at the party is Essie Davin, also known as Little Eye, and Dandelion almost has a fit of apoplexy at the idea of playing with another bard, and I like that very much. But it turns out they are very close friends and a near sister of Dandelion. Duke Aglaval arrives with a new job for Geralt because a pearl diving boat was found with the crew vanished and slaughtered, which Aglaval believes is the work of a sea monster. Geralt accepts the job the next morning, mostly because he promised Dandelion that he would take whatever came next because he begged Dandelion to take this job. He follows Essie onto a terrace. They have already not gotten off to the greatest of starts, and they share a kiss that they're both kind of like, what happened there? Dandelion later remarks that Geralt kissed her because he wants to know how far her fascination with a Witcher would go, and how much he hates his own otherness. He also flaunts it because basically he's still emo Geralt in this story. The next day, Geralt starts his job with Essie joining him to see a Witcher at work. Geralt can't find anyone willing to take him out to the fishing boat's last known location, and the mermaid Shianaz, who Sapkowski writes every single time she shows up how nice her breasts are, wards Geralt away from the Dragon's Fangs, which is where the disappearance happened, which Essie believes indicates the mermaid's guilt. Essie's knowledge of the oceans and tides, however, gives Geralt the idea to wade out to the Fangs at low tide, which he does with Dandelion, and he won't let Essie come and help them. They find a set of stairs leading downward into the water, which Dandelion thinks leads to the sunken city of Ys, which is, I think, a name worthy of Martin. spelled Y-S. A bell begins to tilt from underwater, and the pair are attacked by undersea creatures wearing armor and carrying weapons, aka they are sentient and intelligent. Geralt is dragged underwater, but he and Dandelion escape, and they are saved by Shianaz, who warns him away from the ocean again. Essie dresses his wounds and tells him that she is in love with him, but Geralt can't bring himself to reciprocate any kind of feeling toward her because he is still obsessed with Yennefer. But he does allow Essie to stay with him. And after Dandelion has been collecting a bunch of shells that just are normal shells, and he's like, one of these will have a pearl I can give to Essie for her birthday, Geralt finds a blue shell that contains a pearl that he gives to her, and he tells her that this will basically be her talisman that he can't serve for her. Geralt, the next day, tells Aglaval of the newly discovered race, and he's like, basically, you gotta stop the pearl diving because they're just gonna slaughter you. Aglaval wants to go to war with the creatures, and Geralt and Essie are like, that's a really bad fucking idea. And the insults basically just continue to escalate until a extant mermaid, and she comes in, having made the little sacrifice of her tail to become human so that she may marry Aglaval and live with him on land forever. Much is said of spawning. Geralt, Dandelion, and Essie leave together quite companionably, and they spend a few days together on the road. The night before they are set to part, Dandelion is basically like, guys, please have sex and get this out of your system. I cannot stand this anymore. And they have a conversation, and I think, it's implied that Geralt admits to her that he can't, reciprocate the love that she feels because of Yennefer. But they do have sex, and everything is all right. And then they both fall asleep, and Dandelion composes a ballad in secret that night about a witcher and a bard falling in love at the beach that has a happy ending. That he never performs again because Essie dies of smallpox a few years later, and Dandelion buries her with her lute and the pearl that is protective that Geralt gave her. And I think whatever you think of this story, the last page or two just makes it amps it up to oh my god, whoa, the
Could
feels
hear you
here.
choking up.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm actually just woke up, but this is my morning voice. But I do find the end of this story really, really emotional. For as much as I don't really buy the I'm in love with you, man, I met yesterday. Right. Proclamation. I really think the end provides a great punch. And this story also has a more mature version of Dandelion that we rarely get to see, and is much appreciated. So that is a little sacrifice.
For once, Dandelion did not hit on a girl.
Oh my god.
Right? He probably already did years ago, though.
Well, he did. He's just not Essie.
Not in the story.
He has a very elaborate plan to seduce the girls. So he's singing to the ugly girl, so that the pretty girl will get him. Honestly, Dandelion.
Yeah, which is that's so cruel. But it was still nice to see him have a more mature relationship with someone. Yeah. So the is legend that's not just in this book. I mean, it's something that comes from real life legends.
You mean
I'm not asking. I'm saying
video is or a little Mermaid, which is
both.
Yeah.
But no, just because Michal said that the name was worthy of George Martin, and it's I actually read it before. The name it appeared in other fantasy books that I've read. So
my bad.
Oh,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, also
specific
it's Atlantis and the idea.
Yeah, of course. But even the name I'd already read elsewhere.
Yeah, there was some games in
A
the
very
80s.
Lovecraftian element to it, certainly.
Yeah.
An underground city with angry fish people living in it.
Do they? I guess maybe spoilery here, but will we see them again?
Never.
At any point? Okay.
No.
Nope.
No, not one little element do we ever see again of the fish people.
In the Witcher games, Geralt can just fight in underwater just fine. In the oceans, just fine. You can swim across the entire map.
Okay. In fact, I was wondering if maybe that would be something they were building in the game. Oh well.
Alas. You just fight drowners.
And
so
sirens.
many drowners and sirens.
I agree with Michal. Uneasiness at the fact that, oh my god, this siren is just mermaid, whatever, is just so. She has such beautiful breasts that you can say it once maybe, but just not every time she shows up, please.
Like, it's also every single character. That's the very first thing they pay attention to, even SE11.
Yeah.
It must be very great then.
Well, and then when it was like Essie looked sadly down at her own charms, which barely protruded out of her dress, I'm like, okay, come on, dude.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. These books are definitely a mixed bag, but I think they're worth it in the end.
I mean, other than the very, very bizarre fascination, well, anyways, I do think Shanaz is probably one of my favorite, like, these random characters in these stories. She's just so sassy.
Yeah.
And
it's really a mixed bag, as you said. Like, it's just, you've got these characters, female characters, who are amazing and really sassy and badass and powerful. You've got these weird sexist things that you'd like not to have, and you also have a big conversation about a woman's right to choose, and you're like, okay, how does that all go together? It's a bit, yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely
a story, but
yeah, they definitely are. I mean, and the books do get better in terms of that. They go more down the second path. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much of this is just kind of like fantasy tropes of like the 80s and 90s. You know, like it's the, you know.
I mean, maybe
these were written in the early 90s, and there weren't a ton. I mean, there were some, obviously, but like there weren't a ton of like fantasy novels that treated women like full human beings.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it might also be the fact that like it gets better later on as Sapkowski actually starts to write like chapters from a female point of view, when all his other previous ones have all just been from the male point of view. So he might actually have gotten some more empathy and understanding from entering that side of things. With yeah, I like this story for sure, specifically because for those of you who listen to the audiobook, they actually have like, you have Geralt actually singing to the siren to communicate with her, and so it's like this really gravelly, like, Gianance, and he's like, I just remember Michal just being very tickled pink by the idea of Geralt singing to the mermaid.
Yeah, the audiobook
I
is
can't see that.
hilarious. It is hilarious because the guy who reads it is also just very good, and he gets how like awkward Geralt feels like in the singing. Yeah, actually highly recommend listening to the audiobooks and that story in particular. I also I love kind of the reverse of standards or whatever in this story, because it really is Dandelion being like, you know, being the one who like has to come through after you have that delightfully passive-aggressive Geralt was not angry at Dandelion 6 paragraphs later. No, he definitely wasn't angry at Dandelion. Dandelion did not believe him. Yeah, so I really like that Geralt is the one who has to be like, please take this job. Oh my god. Kind of malfunctions in the presence of two bards together, which is pretty hilarious.
Well, even worse, being second fiddle. I mean...
Yeah, literally.
Right. I'm not sure what I think of, like, Sheena's and what she does there, our mermaid. First of all, do you think that she made her sacrifice to prevent this war, or did she do it because she really wanted to beat the awful Aglava?
I think there is an attraction in the beginning. I do think she became more disillusioned about him over time. But I think you have a point on it, sort of the preventing war aspect, although I'm not too sure about exactly how she is associated with the fish kingdom. I don't know if she's like a important person amongst them. I know she sort of blew a horn and then they sort of all retreated, but it's not, that part's never really explained. But I do think that in part it sort of goes into the theme of sacrifice. and it's kind of interesting that you sort of have to guess at exactly what she's sacrificing there. Is it just her lovely fins, or is it actually just like she's willing to sacrifice part of her, I don't know, comfort and freedom in order to safeguard the peace of the realm, which would make her probably one of the greatest, most person in the entire world. Protected the peace between the seas and the land.
Because, I mean, Aglaval just does not come across as in any way someone you'd want to know. He's like stubborn and is like, hey, she can come to me. She can get rid of hers. She'll do it. What, you want me to sacrifice? I mean, like, the whole story is called A Little Sacrifice, and he's not willing to do any at any time in any way. And he just, like, bullies everyone around him and expects everyone to turn to him. And that's kind of why I didn't like the ending, because she has to sacrifice for him, because God forbid, right? And then, so it's like, I feel like, if anything, as you said, she's become, like, more disillusioned with him, and then she ends up giving everything up for him. So that's why I feel like it wasn't decided she loved him and not going to do it. Just doing this piece, and I wonder if, she's going to now end up... Because she's basically taught him the lesson, this relationship, if I dig my heels in, she'll give in to me. So I feel like they're not going to have a very happy going. So it's not really the happy ending that we get for...
Well, isn't traditionally the Little Mermaid story, like the original Little Mermaid story, not really a happy ending either?
Yeah, with her, she does turn into sea foam, and he does betray her and all that. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of... What bothers me more is that, like, Aglaval gets what he wants.
Right,
Which to me is, like, I'm annoyed at that.
Right.
I will kind of... I'm comfortable with being like, I don't really know what a mermaid wants out of a relationship.
Right.
So, like, and I get the sense that she feels like she still has the power in that dynamic, just from that interaction at the end. Like, he's on his knees, and I don't know. But I think it was, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it, but I do think that it is an interesting, like when Essie says that, like, you're a terrible person, but somehow your heart is still capable of loving a mermaid, and, like, that is a redeeming factor of you. I don't know. I find that an interesting idea, that, like, there's some kind of transcendence that can be found through, like, love. And
when he was perfectly willing to commit ocean genocide just a few moments earlier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure would not have worked.
Yeah. They'd have been slaughtered.
I thought Aglaval was a pretty interesting character, though, just because, I mean, he is obviously, I think it said, was he the third generation of his family that had been the title was Duke. They had sort of carved out this little region, I guess, or town of Bremervoord, like, that they ruled. And there was a certain sense of, like, hard times call for hard leaders, like, that they were still sort of in the phase as a civilization that they were kind of clawing and creating their own existence. But you see where, like, maybe he is taking advantage of everyone still being in that mindset to make his own well-being more comfortable and make his own, and secure his own power. So I don't know, I did get a sense that there was kind of some sympathy that you kind of have to be a hard ass to rule at this place right now, but that maybe he was taking it quite a bit too far as well.
I mean, he does kind of set the standard for, like, rulers we do see farther down the line of they're either obsessed with what they want or with what they call, quote unquote, reasons of state, which are just excuses of, well, everything will descend into chaos if we don't do this a horrible thing. So
yeah, I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess my thinking, though, is, I mean, obviously I haven't read the main story, but it kind of seems like a lot of things do descend into chaos. So there is a certain level of how can you be an effective ruler in this situation? The first priority is to protect your people in what is a pretty chaotic world. So I don't want to just, I know we have the sensibilities that we see nobility and royalty and the way that they act and the way they're very pompous, and our sensibilities right away turn us off to them. But in a world like this, it does interest me, at least, the question of how much of hard times are necessary, and and how much are they abusing it? Because they certainly are.
I think it was sort of pointed out by Geralt that all they needed to do to prevent this conflict was to just not go and pearl farm in that specific location, which was already a pretty dangerous place anyways that you shouldn't go to. And it just so happens that one crew was stupid enough to sell there and then get themselves killed. But he was just not willing to do so because, and it's not for any specific reason or for the welfare of his people, but more like, I need that money. I want to make money. I gotta have my money.
So my understanding was that that was like the entirety where they could get pearls, and that their people relied on that. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, I mean, they said that there was sort of a legend specifically around what's that place called? The two strutting rocks.
The fangs or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people, Dragon Fangs. People usually don't go there anyways, except for with this one occasion where this group was stupid enough to do so.
Okay.
No, what I got is that the other places where they can get the pearls are like dried out, and so he sends someone there, this team there, to get a new place to get the pearls. But there's no pearls anywhere else anymore, and they do rely on them to feed the village. But although I guess they could just fish.
Well, that's
yeah. But yeah, I did get the sense that like he's saying that if they don't get the pearls, they will starve, and he's actually saying that to Geralt. He's like, well, but I can't do that. I can't just leave it alone because my people will starve. But it doesn't come across as his main reason or his actual reason. It's like it's the way he explains and justifies himself.
I agree. I mean, I feel like he says that, but do you think he cares? I don't know. He seems to be more like look, I want to do this, and I'm going to do this because I'm a privileged bitch, and, I don't expect anyone, I expect everyone else to change and get out of my way and allow me to do what I want, and if you don't, then we're going to, and if that means that, we end up going to war and my people get slaughtered, well, that's what's got to happen. Like, it seems like he seems like the kind of person who doesn't take any responsibility for his own actions and makes it instead like that passive aggressive, well, I had to, because that's what I had to do. I don't feel like he doesn't take any, just wants to do what he wants to do, and whatever the consequences for whoever, well, who cares? And that's why it kind of bothers me that he basically gets what.
Also, he just doesn't seem particularly sincere when he's talking about Geralt, and I mean the refusal of payment is pretty galling. I think you hauled this guy out on a boat and she said no. That's not his that's not Geralt's problem.
Exactly. He's a bully who gets away with it.
Yeah, and
he's
a
bully and a skinflint.
I do think his his concern for his population is, it's sort of narcissistic. He cares about them to the extent that he wants to be the ruler of something, and if all your people die, then you're the ruler of nothing. But I don't know. Just definitely, I do think there was meant to be a little more tension in the idea of these rulers are, they're awful, but they are trying to survive in an awful world too.
Yeah, possibly. It's the I don't know, the necessities of what you do for power / the corruptive, qualities of power are definitely something that come up, and so do the transformative power of love is a big theme in the stories too. So I think this is kind of one of those opening salvos in those ideas.
Dig it.
So I think I think this is one of the opening salvos in the idea of the transformative power of love / the corruptive power of power. So it's kind of Aglaval is sort of doing the work of both of those ideas, and I wouldn't necessarily say that he does it successfully as a character, but I think that might be where Sapkowski is coming from and kind of what he's trying to get across.
The only thing is I feel like, we have kind of two love stories in here, you can call it that, and the first one seems really insincere, i.e., the Duke and the mermaid. They just
put her in a pool. We'll see if she agrees to get away.
Yeah, it just
That's
doesn't.
the power of love.
Yeah, it's that, and then of course we got Geralt and Little Eye, and that doesn't seem like mighty love story either. So I don't know sure where he's going at.
Well,
with
that's not a
in this
love story. That's like an unloved story.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like neither
It's
of
a
these is like a yes
one-sided,
genuinely.
it's a tragic one-sided obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting in how kind of we see more kind of love and respect coming from Geralt and Essie in that, like, yeah, like they're not really in love, but they do feel a connection, but they like both mutually kind of respect each other. And then you have Algoval who's like, I am deeply in love with you, so I'm going to kidnap you because it's what I want. And you're just like, that's not how this works. Also, I don't know if we're gonna move on at any point, but one thing I also just kind of like, I'm not
At some point we will.
Ever,
I'm not
never.
ragging on this story.
Paul,
I'm
can
just
you make a
surprised
little
we've talked about
sacrifice and talk
Algoval
about
that
this
much.
forever?
But how at the end of the story, as Dandelion is kind of seeing to himself, we have a werewolf sneaking up on the group, thinking to attack them. He then discovers it's Dandelion, listens for a bit, and then goes away because he's like, oh, I like Dandelion. Dandelion's good. And it's just one of those little random tidbits of the world where you're like, was that really necessary? And then you kind of go, well, it was interesting.
Speaking of which, I remember when we were talking at the chat, at least, about the 4 weeks ago. I remember everyone going, "Oh, Dandelion is so great in the next story," or even at the last podcast. And I was reading this, waiting for the great Dandelion moments, and I felt like a little bitter and a little. I don't. It was just. What did you guys? What made you all say that? What did you think of? Why did you like him?
I thought there was a lot more depth to him. I think just his relationship with Issy or what's her? Sorry, I'm mispronouncing her name. Issa.
Essie.
Essie. Okay, sorry. I thought his relationship with her really. I mean, it showed him treating a woman as an adult and having just
A person.
having just a totally kind of different depth to him. And then definitely, I mean, say what you will, but I think his womanizing is a lot lighter in this story. It's not quite as ogling.
Diet womanizing.
Yeah, and I mean it's just easier to read. It's not the weird comments and the.
It's not quite as center stage as it is in other. Yeah, I mean I like Dandelion in this story first of all because I think the end is so sad, and the idea of this character that we've interacted with almost exclusively as a really really superficial funny but also really in some ways very gross character having that experience of staying with a friend as she dies during a plague and then burying her. I think that's just very that's very moving and it retroactively says more about Dandelion than maybe the story itself does. But I also just really like that he calls Geralt out on a lot of his shit, and he's kind of you treated Essie in this way because you are an emo dummy and are oh, she doesn't like me for me, she just wants to sleep with a witcher, blah 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 blah, and he's get over yourself and treat her nicely. And I find that unusually astute, let's say, for Dandelion.
Yeah, completely agree with you right there. The ending, just the last page is really, really, just really good and really sad.
Yeah, and that's actually why I love the werewolf line, because, the text is oh, and he realized it was Dandelion, so he just listened and left. But I don't know, I think that there's some kind of, it could just be a funny line, but I don't think it is. I think there's just something about, the power of song and, I think in this story, Sapkowski is trying to do a little bit more, is trying to create a little bit more depth to Dandelion. And I think that last line kind of suggests that there is more power to the what he's doing as a bard and the power of his songs and whatever than maybe we regard in most of the story.
Yes, exactly. Which is really nice because, like as a musician myself, I do believe strongly in the power that music can have on people and the sensibility that it requires to make good music. And I love this part of the story, the fact that like you never really hear Dandelion sing because you're reading a book, and you only see him through his interactions with women mostly, which I don't excuse, but you also get that there is something to what he does. It's not just frivolity.
I also wonder with him, do you think that he is as popular and beloved as he claims to be? Like, do you think we only really know we don't really get to see anyone fawning? Do you think it's all in his head, or he's well known that like, oh, Dandelion's in town?
Oh no, yeah, I think he is pretty. His fame
in the later books, you definitely get the feeling that he is generally famous. Maybe not like an A-list, maybe more of a B-list, but like people do come to like see his like performances, and I believe the entire like first part of the first part of Blood of Elves is just Dandelion singing to a massive crowd of people. Spoilers, Dandelion sings.
Oh no, you ruined it.
So it opens with like Woodstock. I don't even know what to call this world. Witcher Woodstock.
It's just the continent.
One last thing I want to say is I really like when when Essie's like, Geralt, you're sensitive, and he's like, I'm not sensitive, you're sensitive.
Let's move into the Sword of Destiny, which I believe is being easier.
It starts with Geralt being sent into the Brokilon forests, which were ruled over by these group of people known as Dryads, by King Venslav of Bruges, which was a kingdom that bordered the forest of Brokilon. So Dryads are basically they're a race of people of wood people. They're all female, they're exclusively female race. Some of them were originally human who were transformed by magical means into these people. But essentially, they've been at war with all the neighboring human kingdoms, and over time, their lands and their people have dramatically decreased due to human incursion. And they have now since essentially established a policy of shoot on sight of any human being who enters these forests without their permission. So Geralt had previously had some dealings with their queen Ethne, who has since allowed him to be able to enter these forests. And so he goes into the forest. He discovers one of them had already, a young squire had already met his end by arrows. And then he soon found another wounded man, a person that he had previously helped named Frexinet. He found out that Frexinet was only in these forests because he was chasing after a princess, supposedly a princess, who had ran into the forests willy-nilly, and has since been injured by the Dryads. Soon the Dryads' army appears, and Geralt was able to convince them to first allow Geralt to go meet with Queen Ethne, and second to spare Frexinet and tend to his wounds. So Geralt was led by one of these Dryads, a relatively new Dryad named Brienne. And in the journey to the center of the forest to Duin Canal, which is essentially the heart of the Brokilon forests, they found out that a little girl was being threatened by a giant centipede. So Geralt does his Witcher thing, kills the centipede, saves the girl, and the girl starts acting out and claims that she is a princess and they should listen to what she says. And eventually Geralt found out that the girl was originally going to be sent to meet with her potential fiance, Prince Kistrin of Verdun. but she had other ideas. Didn't like how Kistrin smelled, found him to be very obnoxious, so she decides to run away into the Brooklyn forests. Eventually Bran agrees to take Ciri along with the Witcher to meet with Evney. So they had to stay at night in the forest at night. Ciri asks Geralt to tell him a story. He tells him the story of the fox and the cat arguing about who is better at eluding hunters. The fox claimed that he has many techniques. Cat has one, run up to the top of a tree. Eventually, when hunters comes, the cat survives by running up to the top of a tree. The fox is made into a pelt. Anyway, so eventually they make their way. The three made their way to meet with Evney. They found that the Dryads has also kept their promise and brought Freixenet to be healed in Duin Canal. Geralt knows exactly what's going to happen to Freixenet, which is that he's going to become a breeder for the Dryads, which Freixenet was not too sad about. Although Geralt reminds him that this is a very perfunctory thing for the Dryads, so don't get too excited. Finally, Geralt meets with Evney, and he knows that Evney also plans to give Ciri this magical water, which will essentially transform her into a Dryad. And they get into an argument about the relationships between the Dryads, but also all these the so-called the other non-human races with the humans, with mankind. And Geralt makes the point that, look, it's going eventually the progress of mankind cannot be stopped. You either have to learn to live with them, or you're going to go extinct eventually. Whereas Evney insists on keep fighting them. But eventually, but what Geralt doesn't realize was that, as it turns out, the Dryads' magic have no effect on Ciri whatsoever. Ciri was somebody who's special, and eventually Geralt understood why she was special, because she eventually realizes that Ciri was she was the daughter of Duny and Paveda all the way back a book ago, from Question of Price. So eventually, Evney allows Ciri to leave with Geralt. On their way back to Sintra, back to her grandmother Calanthi, they were being waylaid by a group of mercenaries hired by the King of Verdun. Ciri runs up a tree. Hey, he's the story. And Geralt fights with these mercenaries. Eventually, another returning character, the druid Malsasak, came and helped them out, and to defeat the mercenaries. And Malsasak asked Geralt what he's going to do from now on, reminding him that Ciri is the child that was promised to him by what was that? By when he said, "Give me what you."
The law of surprise.
Yeah, law of surprise. Yeah, that thing. By the law of surprise, and but Geralt decides that he is instead just going to leave Ciri, and ask Malsasak to escort her back to Calanthi, despite that Ciri very much wants to go with him, and that's sort of the end of this story.
Humans are the virus.
So yeah, there is that larger theme.
Well, that's another. I mean, and I don't know kind of how this all plays out in the main story. Like, I'm hoping there's not just some magic pill fix to a lot of these things, but
definitely not.
Nope.
Good, because honestly,
to the point that you might actually wish that there was at certain
yes.
points.
Okay.
Gets even worse in the video.
Ask Paul how many times I messaged him almost crying. Like, a lot.
But like,
it was very fun.
I mean, I do think these books so far have done a great job of just sort of showing how complex progress, that on a certain level we all believe that, that we want to save human lives and care for human lives, but ultimately, I mean, in our world and in this one, the resources are finite to an extent. So it's like, I guess Thanos had a point, but
Right.
But
That's the
Kev
moral of
goes
the story.
X4.
so, not had a point. Maybe his main point wasn't correct, but he did sort of have a point.
I mean, this
So-
sort of also reflects sort of what the same theme is also seen in the Lord of the Rings with the elves, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, and I mean both. I mean all
But
these different fantasy.
sorry.
I mean, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I think the Lord of the Rings sort of, even in the Silmarillion, they don't show the full awfulness of
No.
it, and they sort of provide another place for the elves to go. So
Yes,
it doesn't end up nearly as
Yeah, I
as ugly.
I think all these authors, Tolkien, Sapkowski, even George R. R. Martin, they're all playing on the same theme of imperialism, on the same actual historical process of imperialism, right?
Right.
And of course, Tolkien is a much more romanticized, beautiful, and you can say cleaned up vision of imperialism, in which men and elves eventually got along. And elves just say, "Yeah, okay, it's your world now. We're going to sail to another continent." Whereas in The Witcher and in the Song of Ice and Fire, it's very clear there is no other world. The mankind is just going to take what used to be other people's and destroy the other people's.
Yeah.
And the other people's, you either have to learn to live with mankind, or you're doomed.
But I would say, I don't know, with The Witcher, I feel like they're very similar concepts. With The Witcher, there's definitely more of an environmentalism
Yes.
twinge to it, feel to it than Martin has, I think.
Yeah, and that comes with sort of what the character of Geralt, right? Because he is someone who is part of this sort of almost part of this lost world. He sees sort of someone who's in between these two groups, the humans and the non-humans.
Yeah, I mean, neither group comes off terribly well in here, I think. There's neither side you're rooting for, because I mean the dryads are just kidnapping kids and brainwashing. The humans are going, well, we're going to come in because we don't honor you. What the fuck we want? If you try to kill us, we'll.
Yeah. Well, I mean, historically speaking, if you look at sort of the tribes that, I mean, generally the tribes that put up the fiercest resistance, I mean, whether that's you pick wherever, but tend to still have an identity now, as opposed to the ones that tried to assimilate. They have been a lot more erased, I feel like. And generally speaking, I mean, I know that that's not clean cut, but
I mean, I don't know if we want to really go into it in that much in depth in terms of the historical.
Right.
But like, there's the but regarding the dryads, I mean, it comes very down to survival, and they make the point that when Geralt, compared to when Geralt first visited, there were a lot less tents.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the opening is also very powerful, where he's like, okay, so this kid had no idea what the arrow meant. He didn't even know what direction he was running in. Yeah. And like they killed him because they don't care. And like the idea that they used to be a lot more, they used to offer a lot more warnings about turning around and leaving Brokilon. But then I also, I mean, it's very moving in my opinion, because he's like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're 70, it doesn't matter if you're 6, it doesn't matter, like all whatever. But when Eithne, like, I don't agree with Eithne, but because I really do think that, like, if you're going to exert aggression, you have to do that on the people who are actually being aggressive and not the people who wander into your territory accidentally, because it's not working anyway. But like, I think she, like, the idea that like the other side is pretending that there's a bargain but not holding it up. Mm-hmm. And like, so she's like, why should we be beholden to that at all?
And again, for her, it's a matter of survival. And like she she likes to claim that she's apart from this world. But when you read, I mean, it's very obvious.
Oh, yeah. The lady doth protest way too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So she knows exactly what's going on around her. She knows all the neighboring kings. She has all the up to date information. She's very much part of the world. She can't really claim herself to be part. And Geralt calls her out on that. But on the other hand, how are they going to survive if they don't do something like this? They're already sort of pushed very much to the edge.
Well, I mean, it is a kind of neat idea of that. They're a race that pretty much can't continue without humans. I mean, either they're stealing them and brainwashing them, or we're using Frixenet there as breeding stock. He's just the stud. It's like they can't have their own kids, so what makes them, I mean, almost parasites in some way?
Well, I mean, that's not unique. Like, that's the same system that the wizards and sorcerers work on. Nobody's born to like that's a theme that becomes pretty important. That like Calanthe actually brings it up. She's like, why don't you just make more witchers by like having children? And he's like, we can't do that. It doesn't work that way.
But they're not a race in the way that, I mean, the wizards and the witchers aren't a race like these are. Or maybe are they a race, or are they just humans at this point?
No, but I don't think dryads really are a race either.
Well,
Not really.
They kind of are. I mean, they're specifically, they're a magical people. They were here before humans.
Right.
And the thing is, I think it's very interesting that it is a race in which none of the population is male, yet they are still able to produce by essentially breeding with basically almost any other humanoid race they can come across. And because, like they say, like he tells Frexenet, like any child that like the dryads have will be like 100% dryad. Like they're not going to be like half human. They're going to be complete dryad. But the only other, like there are two ways in which they can have more dryads. One being that way, which is kind of the more, I guess, pure way where you're 100% dryad, or by kidnapping young girls and then kind of feeding them the waters of Brokilon.
Yeah. And I think the Brienne, the dryad who led Geralt into the forest, out of the forest, is very interesting example of that. I mean, that she sort of remembered who she was, and then had to, but at the very end, still denies that her past.
Do you think that was a unique situation? I couldn't tell if this was just she's the one who broke through and remembered, Geralt's help, or if it was they really all remember but kind of don't, their trauma or or what I was.
It could be a mix. I think it is like one of the reasons why they might be so keen on having Frexenet to give them more dryad children is because there's like a possible threat all the time of some of the human to dryad conversion kind of remembering who they were and kind of rejecting or like pushing aside the possibilities. I feel like the dryads would prefer it to just have their dryad children, and like they only steal the young girls only as we're running low on dryads, we need more of us, so this kidnapping will have to do.
But they are real dryads. I mean, they're not,
Yeah, but I mean, at which point, I guess this is my own reading, is that they are essentially converted dryads. As
I'm saying, like,
opposed
in
to
terms of like being given like the responsibility of a dryad, it doesn't seem like they're like, your skills are lesser or whatever. Like it seems
they still
like
treat them as dryads, but at the same time, I don't know. What do I know?
Well, it's a very interesting fine line between civilization and non-civilization, and it's always, and this sort of, I guess, what makes the allegory for imperialism very useful here, in that a lot of the people. Well, if you think of people like Gandhi, in the way he's tried to fight against imperialism, but very much Gandhi was also himself very much a product of imperialism. His education was in South Africa was very much comes from the fact that he is living in a British Empire. And a lot of it, this idea that he developed over time, I mean, some of it came from Hindu traditions, etc. He likes to claim, but a lot of it came from what he learned in his university and through the course as a lawyer. So are people in India, by the time we get to the 1940s, are they Indians or are they British? And that's sort of always a very interesting question to ask, whether it's in historical fiction or not. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. I think that really speaks to how, I don't know, that's something reading to this point that I've just been amazed by, was how often I feel like this connects to the difficulties of answering all these questions in the real world. And I like that this is a world where it's just as difficult. There's no good answers, because and maybe that speaks to where we are in 2020. which if the world makes it to 2021 or beyond and people listen to this years from now, you know what 2020 means, like where it feels like there's no good answers to anything, like that, that whatever steps forward we take for the issues going on, all are fraught with a lot of side effects. And I like that about this universe. It makes it feel very authentic.
There's also the idea of like expanded culpability, right? Like, so the dryads kill anyone who tries to come into Brokilon, and it the only reason they didn't kill Ciri is because they didn't think she was human. It's pretty intense, and like Geralt, basically, who himself has plenty of issues with being regarded as human and the way people regard him as non-human, is the one who's like, okay, I will represent man in this equation that you're trying to make. Like, it's fine. It's my fault. I will take it on for you. And I found that really, really interesting and powerful to kind of imagine, I don't know, Geralt kind of standing in for that when he really doesn't in the real world, or in the rest of the reality that this takes place in. Yeah.
In a way, he kind of has to, because none of the humans, well, first of all, are allowed into the forest. None of them, the dryads, would trust any of these humans to enter the forest. But on the other hand, Geralt is exactly the kind of person who can sort of bridge that gap. But the problem is that gap is way too wide for anybody to bridge at this point.
I kind of took it as like he just generally tries to de-escalate things wherever he can, and that was why that was why he was kind of speaking to her options and how to prevent her committing more violence.
Right, but like, what's his role? Like where are his responsibilities in this equation? He isn't human. By a lot of humans, he's treated terribly and like a magical abomination and mutant and all that stuff, which is something that he was dealing with in the previous chapter, that like he couldn't even imagine that Essie would want to treat him like a normal object of affection. But at the same time, he is magical enough to, I guess, survive in Brokilon and be tolerated by the dryads, but like technically part of his responsibility is to the dryads. Like, he as a professional, it's like he is like, he's making a line where he doesn't fight, he doesn't kill dryads. Like theoretically they are magical, I guess, so they could fall under the category of like, please exterminate the dryads for us, just like you did this other creature. And that's a very clear line that he, again, with Essie, he talks about, like, he's, my code just tells me what to do. And it's like, oh, you're pretending you don't have all the feels. You do. But I don't know. I find it really interesting that he's just in this, he's in two worlds at once, and each world kind of uses him for for its own purposes, and I don't think Eithne would think of herself that way, but I do think it's very similar. I think she is taking advantage of Geralt's willingness to stand in for humanity, and making and pivoting her actions around that, because ultimately I think she's very disappointed in the way this all turns out, that she can't take Ciri, and that like the destiny of humans becomes primary, right? Like that becomes more important than her goals for Brokilon. And yeah, I don't know. I find that whole combination of circumstances and Geralt's kind of in between worlds a really interesting idea. Also, Ciri.
Yeah, I was about to say that same thing. So she sort of steals the show in a lot of ways. This little,
definitely.
Yeah, and what is she, 6 in this or 5, something like that? And she just,
I think she's supposed to be like 9.
Yeah, she's 10. I think she's 9, 10.
Oh, okay.
She's 6 in the previous chapter.
Okay, and
not the previous chapter, the next chapter in the flashback.
Oh, okay, that's right. I mean, she just is fiery and has so much agency of her own, and just this fantastic entitlement that I'm assuming she's going to lose pretty quick, but that is kind of cute coming from a kid that age, to just think she's in charge of the world, and then of course just gets outwitted by Geralt a couple times, but it's just I don't know, just a great character. I don't know that I have anything too deep to say about it other than it's awesome. She's great.
You'll see a lot more from her.
Oh, yeah.
As in, like, she's basically the main one.
Yeah.
She is the main character going forward.
Constantly being like, my grandmama will like have your head chopped off or something.
I mean, she's definitely at this point very spoiled. She's a princess. She acts like one. But on the other hand, she is someone who's not afraid to get herself dirty.
She's got the spunk that we like from characters. She's also like cute and adorable and sweet. You know, as you know, she hasn't yet been ruined by the evils and horrors of the world, which obviously is coming. So
there's a very Arya-like quality to her.
Right. It's very, very sweet at this point. We love her. That does make sense. That actually fits. We think of Arya thing, right? And what happens to her? I hope she doesn't have as tragic a life, but I have a feeling she's going to.
Well, I mean, I think also what I really appreciate about this is like she's annoying and obnoxious, and like I love her and I think she's adorable, but like she's not written as, you know, a total sweetheart, you know. Like Geralt is like, I'm literally gonna whip your ass if you say one more thing.
Right.
Calls her a brat a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Well, she is.
I mean, you know, I don't know how normal a child is like, I'm gonna have your head cut off, and then like sticks to that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love the protectiveness that comes with, you know, meeting somebody who is, you know, Geralt's never interacted with a child before, and in what we've seen of him, and like it's so like it's both so normal and so obviously like destiny and weird, and like their comfort with each other seems to be partly, you know, the fact that destiny is at play there and they are supposed to meet and be together in some way. But I don't know. I find it so like endearingly human and just, you know.
I mean, it's the most likable we've seen of Geralt, you know. I mean, yes, there's his like love for Yennefer and all that that's sweet too, but I mean, this is kind of like, you know, up until now you'd wonder like, would you be friends with him? Would you want to? But this part of him you like really like, you know. The two of them seem better together than separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think going forward, their relationship really makes the stories much more interesting than what was before. Part because of that, because Geralt absolutely needed someone like Ciri, like Yennefer.
Right.
Like his relationship with Yennefer is important. The chapters without Yennefer noticeably do suffer without her presence. But like Ciri adds such an important dimension to this character, and to the story as a whole.
And I love the idea that it just comes as such a surprise, you know, like I think he's not, I don't know, like you know, I feel like destiny knows what it's doing in the idea that like Geralt, and we see in the next thing, like he actually isn't interested in like following this particular path and being like, oh, I have a bond with this child, like whether or not I want to make it a Witcher, like I can take advantage of that. And like I think it was smart of destiny to be like, we're not really going to give you a choice before you develop like feelings of bonding toward Ciri, and she develops them toward you, you know. Like Ciri actually has so much more information in this situation than he does, even though she doesn't like put it all together immediately. But I think that's a really interesting way. And the fact that he like fucks off at the end and she is like, this is clearly the wrong thing to do. Hello. is very, very powerful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although Destiny will have a little say in that coming up soon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Destiny's like, well, I guess I can just destroy all of Sintra.
Right. Fine, you won't go with her. You won't go with him, then we'll make you.
But yeah, no, I love how it took both characters along a while to figure out exactly who the other is. That it basically took Geralt basically the entire story to finally figure out, oh, wait a minute, I remember now. Duny and Pavetta. And I do like the fact that Siri actually realizes this before he does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without show spoilering too much, I just caught up on the show and watched to the end and got this part.
I wasn't going to say anything about that.
All I was going to say is I thought it was interesting that they did it different. Their meeting is very different, and I like it. You know, a lot of the things they did better in the show, but I think this works better for their getting together and why and how. I like this a lot more. Like, when I was watching the show, I was like, why even care? And in this, I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And here I'm like, oh, this is so sweet. I love it.
This is the thing that annoyed me in the show, that this chapter was adapted the way it was. I'll just put it that way.
Barely.
Yeah, I think it is very, I don't know. I mean, Siri, they had no idea what they were doing with her in the show, I think. And it showed a lot. I think, I mean, I love the last moments of the show where they come together and like, as they do in the next chapter. But I felt like, well, no, I didn't feel like, because I hadn't read the books at that point, but I feel looking back like there is a value in the, I don't know, in like the accidentalness of it, and the something that neither of them were expecting. And already you see like this has huge consequences. Siri gets 3 people killed, because she is running away from this situation, which is worth talking about when we have like Geralt being like, oh, I'm the sword of destiny, and the other edge is death, and like it's like, and you have Siri there who has already, and spoilers, will cause a lot of tragedy and stuff that follows her around. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into the magical nature of Siri yet. The fact that she not only inherited her mother's powers, but seemingly is even greater than that. Perhaps due to Geralt's involvement.
Well, we won't know that for a while because we're not there yet.
well, we know this right now because like the water did absolutely nothing to her. Like Geralt, he has to go through like many years of Witcher training to not be able to fall under the spell.
True.
That thing just did absolutely to Siri, and that's important to keep in mind.
So I'm trying to find the definition in French precisely of the word. So it's providence. I don't know if that exists. Providence. I don't even know. But it's not destiny. And we have a word for destiny, I guess, in French, and it's another one. And so I'm wondering why they chose this one. And from what I can read, providence is more. It has a religious.
It's like ordained by a higher power.
Yeah. And I don't know if it has. If it's important here.
That's an interesting
translation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I mean, to my understanding of how destiny is used in the book, that's probably a better translation in English. Like if they use providence instead of destiny.
Yeah, because it's not something that's doomed to happen or like fatality. It's it's more like there's something bigger at play. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they treat destiny, almost as like a godlike figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like providence as like divine, like specifically connected to like a godly figure. Yeah. Whereas destiny is kind of like secular,
more vague.
Yeah.
Sure. And maybe this part came into the translation, that they didn't want that religious overtone. Although, as Paul noted, there is sort of a almost pseudo religious dimension to this.
Yeah. Providence is maybe more like implies there's a puppet master, and then when you say destiny, it's almost sort of like when people talk about throw something out to the universe and see what the universe throws back.
Right.
I will say, like, even for all the talk of the word destiny in the books, there's a lot more about sort of overcoming destiny as well, and that this is not just about destiny. And we can talk more about that once we get into the next chapter, though.
Yep. Speaking of which, I feel like anyone have any final thoughts on Sword of Destiny, or shall we jump
Oh
to
well,
something
actually,
more.
I did want to
Oh.
ask Marie something because in the English translation, whenever Siri says the word awfully, like I was awfully cold, she says offy, so AWFFY.
Ah.
So I don't know if they put in another.
Let me check. Let me check. Yeah, I didn't like it. Didn't I didn't notice it specifically, but maybe, and I just forgot. I'll check.
See if they put in her speech impediments.
Which also another shout out to Peter Kenny, the narrator of the audiobooks,
So
because
good.
he not only does a 9-year-old girl in this chapter, he does a 9-year-old girl with a Scottish accent with a cold. So
So no.
He
Have
has
you sent him-
range.
Have you sent him to George for?
I mean, seriously,
for
it happens to be like
TWOW?
I don't think men should do women's voices. I think you can have another female narrator in there who pops in and does the women's voices.
Then they'd have to pay 2 people.
Yeah, I know. But
Like
but
he still
I
does
think it would
very
be
good.
worth it. But yeah, I think that he does a really good job as far as doing his best to demasculinize himself.
Hey.
And he's just really good. Like this is the first time I'm reading it in like text, and like I can't not hear the way he talks about it. And like
Yeah,
all my
Siri just has a
pronunciations
Scottish accent for me now.
yeah, functions have a Scottish accent.
All right.
But like I'm also he pronounces like Gwyn, like Geralt's Elvish
Blade.
or whatever. Gwyn.
Blade.
Yeah, so for him it's Gwyn Blythe because
Yeah.
it's double D. So for me it's Gwyn Blythe.
Well, it is Welsh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The elder language has a lot of Welsh in it.
Yes. Oh yeah, I guess one thing that's worth noting is that like we do get Geralt's infertility here.
Yeah.
In terms
Yay.
of like in terms of, like Eithne's daughter and
Yeah.
that being part of the reason why she has a grudge against him, even though like that's objectively not his fault.
But I guess it's
Usually
very,
it's the other way around. You
It's
get
like
mad
you-
that someone did get your daughter pregnant.
yeah. Very quickly, the story of Agni's daughter. This is not in the Netflix TV, the Netflix TV show, but in the Polish Witcher TV show, they actually show the whole story
Oh.
of
The Hexer.
the Hexer, yes, of Agni's daughter Moran and Geralt's dalliance. Don't watch that show. Show is very bad, but but I did.
Sorry,
watch it.
Michal.
He
were
disavowed it,
were you
didn't he?
asking about
I think.
Sapkowski.
maybe, yeah. Michal, were you asking about how Siri talks, or how about Brienne?
Yeah, Siri.
Siri. Okay. No, I don't think there's anything really like she has the cold, but it's not specific. Yeah.
Huh.
It's not. There's no weird words. I don't think so.
Interesting.
But yeah, I'm not sure. But Brienne speaks with a kind of like old French additions, like S's in words where they disappeared in our time. Yeah, so just a way to translate. Yeah.
It's very interesting to me, all the translations, because I'm reading it and I'm like, I know I'm missing stuff. I know I'm missing stuff.
Well, welcome to my world.
Yes.
It's actually it's something that I'm kind of sad about, because so now I read fantasy more and more in English. And I mean, when it's the original language, and there's a lot of fantasy in English. And it's great, and I'm like really happy to read it in English. But I'm also kind of sad because it means I very, very rarely read in French anymore. And like it's kind of sad because I love reading in French, and these books I've mostly discovered first in French. Like just A Song of Ice and Fire, I've read it first in French, and I know I'm never going to read it again in French, and I feel like I'm losing something too. So it's just, you gotta make a choice.
Yeah, I remember having to read English original novels in Chinese. The first Harry Potter book was, I think, the biggest one that comes to my mind. And
Harry Potter.
weird, the weird.
I'm never gonna read
Yeah.
them in English. I think,
Hmm.
like I think it's much more authentic in English, and it has this British feel that it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily have in French. But
Right.
they're my childhood books, and I know them almost by heart in French by this point. So it would be, I don't know, like just too different. Anyway, translation.
The worst, but the best.
That's interesting.
If only we could all just speak all the languages.
If only we had a babblefish.
I was just gonna say that.
If we had a TARDIS.
All right. Well, now that we seem to be getting further into digressions.
Sorry.
Maybe. No, it's
Yeah,
okay.
you know.
I do
That's what
As
Vok
the-
is for.
No,
As
I
the
actually
king of
think the
digressions, I
translation is
say.
an important one to talk about. So.
Yeah. Sure. Are we ready to roll into something more? And that
Now for
something more
something
is
more.
something more.
All
Sorry.
right. That's all right. Okay, so our story begins with the merchant Yurga, which spelled out looks a lot like Yurga slightly, which I've gotten so mixed up sometimes. I'm like, why
Yes.
is he talking to a river? Anyway,
Yes.
who he is moving along a crumbling bridge, and bridges are home to monsters. So he comes across another horseman who is Geralt of Rivia. They talk about the merchant's predicament, and Geralt remarks that the wagon is too big because the wagon he's pulling gets stuck on the bridge, and this bridge is famous for having monsters come out at night. So Geralt comes along and says, we can't pull it out, but I can, you should probably abandon it, but if you want, I could just at least protect you because well, actually, he doesn't say that yet, because he's like, oh, you should abandon the cart. Yurga says he can't because this is basically his entire year's profit, and so he says, I'll give you anything if you kind of help me protect my cart. That's the law of surprise, and Geralt's like, you know what? I'm in. We need more witchers. He then manages to kill off the monsters that are attacking, and then his injured body is put into the cart by Yurga and some of his servants who've kind of come back after running away. He then begins to fade in and out of consciousness, in which he is remembering different times as Yurga is taking him back to his house, or to at least get him a healer. His first dream is about Yennefer and their last meeting during the Beltane holiday. As they are crossing another river, Yurga explains how they are now out of Nymeria and are now in Sadden. The Witcher asks the merchant to hand him one of his potions. He takes it, and then he slips back into unconsciousness. He then dreams of when he went to Sintra to claim his child Surprise, who was Ciri, hoping to talk to Dooney and Pavetta. Geralt arrives, assuming it's a boy, and he asks Mousak which of the kids playing outside is the one. But the druid tells him, he can't tell him because Calanthe has basically said he is forbidden from revealing to Geralt which is the child Surprise. The druid also reveals that originally he was hired on by Calanthe to kill the Witcher should he ever come back. But eventually Calanthe just kind of canceled it because it took so long for Geralt to show up, and because she might have conflicting interests. Geralt and Calanthe meet and have a long discussion in which he tells the queen that he has no real intention of taking Pavetta and Dooney's son. And they also discuss witchers and trials, as well as how Geralt became a witcher himself. Here we get told that Mousak's assertions that Geralt was a child of Surprise are just stories, that Geralt was abandoned to the witchers by his mother, a sorceress. Next, Geralt kind of wakes up and finds himself being treated by his mother, the sorceress Vicenna. He kind of wondered whether or not he would ever cross paths with her, and just very cold to her because, what are you going to do when the mom who abandoned you is tending your wounds? However, as much as he wants to get away from her, Vicenna tells him to rest, and he won't essentially want to talk to her once he's awake again. She dismisses the idea of him doing anything, what he plans for it to change anything. And she says goodbye, and he tries to resist the goodbye, but her soothing magic kind of puts him to sleep again. In the next scene, Geralt is conscious again, and he is riding with Yurga, and they talk about the second battle of Sadden, as well as Yurga telling him that his mother isn't necessarily a bad person, as she is a very famous healer, and in that, unlike other sorcerers, she's much more concerned with helping people than actually being a sorcerer, which is just a very presumptive title that a lot of them take. Yurga mentions that the number of the as they approach the location of the second battle of Sadden, which is when Nilfgaard attempted to invade the north after conquering Sintra. They were pushed back by a alliance of the northern kings as well as the conclave of mages. There's a large monolith set up for the names of the fallen mages on it, and as Yurga is kind of ruminating on what the names are, Geralt makes him stop to climb Sadden Hill and read the names that are on the obelisk. Reading from top down, he reminisces about some of the mages he knew that died. And as he is reaching the bottom of the list, a blonde-haired lady passes by, radiating cold. She kneels down in front of the obelisk, covering the last name of the final mage, who he is worried might be Yennefer. She describes herself as Death, and they have a little conversation. He states that she's taken all from him, but she interrupts him, saying she doesn't take anything but hands to hold and accompany those alone in a mist, which is what everything around fades to. Eventually, Geralt wakes up on the hill, having possibly dreamed this entire thing or being put to sleep again by magical means. Yurga then reveals that the last name on the monolith is not Yennefer, but in fact just another mage. Eventually, they do arrive in Sadden, where Yurga lives. He and his wife are well past their childbearing years, so he's fairly certain that a new family member is not what he will be giving Geralt. However, he does say that he does have two strong, bright sons, and he would be all right with one of them becoming a witcher, because he says it wouldn't be that bad. He said Geralt refuses, though, saying that Yurga taking care of him and tending to him when he could have just left him for dead has been enough. Yurga insists, but Geralt refuses to take any payment. He then decides to start heading back to Sintra to claim the child's surprise after having all these magical encounters and talking with his mother. But coming across the river Yurga, he comes across a large group of refugees fleeing the invasion. Sintra hasn't been conquered yet. I don't know why it said. I'm looking at the wiki. It said the second battle of Sadden. It should be the first battle of Sadden. And Geralt spies Dandelion among the refugees, because of course he does. Because where else would Dandelion be other than the thick of it? Dandelion is like, let's get the fuck out of here. But Geralt's like, no, we need to make for Sintra. But Dandelion reveals that Sintra has been completely sacked. Calanthe is dead, and most likely Ciri is too. Since the crossing point they are at the river is now being kind of closed off for military personnel only, they try to find a new way around. They decide to head back to Yurga, warn him, and also possibly see if he knows of another way across the river. Yurga is oh wait, did they arrive yet? No, I don't think they arrived back yet, but Yurga is still traveling with them. They arrive at Yurga's house, and his wife kind of comes up saying that, surprise, they have an extra child. It's Ciri, who escaped the sack of Sintra, was taken care of by some druids who were seen to some of the war children, and was then adopted by Yurga's wife. And so, yay, Ciri shows up, recognizing Geralt from before, runs to meet him, and says, "It's just like they predicted, Geralt. Like they predicted. I'm your destiny. Say it. I'm your destiny." In reply, Geralt says, "You're more than that, Ciri. Much more." And that's where the story ends.
Okay, I was completely lost on the chronology at the very end, like the very last. When he meets Dandelion, that's flashback, right?
That's also a flashback. Yeah, it's
right.
a very.
But
I didn't catch that.
It's really unclear. Like there's no
So
separation, and then he's back with the merchant, and you're like, how did that happen?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So
I agree.
I don't know how it is like in the versions of books you guys have. Usually, so in the one that I'm reading, when they usually break off with the flashbacks, they sort of has this weird break in the page, in which basically sort of starts in sort of a new paragraph, except with a bunch of tabs to show you.
I'm reading the ebook, and I don't have that.
Yeah. So yeah, right. So the book I'm reading right now, which is sort of, I don't know what edition this is. This is from Orion Books with the really pretty full character covers, original art covers. What they do is basically whenever there's a flashback, there's a long break, like they just like several blank like paragraph breaks, and then sort of the new paragraph starts, or like almost mid sentence, in a very funny format. So
I don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, for the other flashbacks, you get like his talking with Yurga, and then there's a like, and he felt himself go, and then you have the new scene, so you can understand that
Sure.
there's a break, and but here just nothing. But I've read it quite quickly because I was late. But yeah, it was confusing.
Right.
But I think if we want to compare that with maybe some of the previous chapters or stories where there were confusing things about the chronology, it's better, I think. Like it is confusing, but you have the like you still understand what's going on, and the flashbacks are very compelling. And you have something to hold on to, which is, I mean, I don't really know what he does differently in the writing, but I think it was just better and more like the right amount of confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the craft really shows through here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if people have an interpretation on what the something more is.
I just took it to mean that he had something more, that Yurga had something more at home when he got there. There was another...
Oh no, I mean like when Geralt and Yennefer, and they're all like, destiny isn't enough. There has to be something more.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, because I think it's love.
Something like that. Human connections.
Drive. Yeah.
Because ultimately, what brings Geralt and Ciri together is not just destiny. And this is the part where I am sort of annoyed by how the TV show did this. But what brought them together is because of that human connection they made years ago, because they liked each other and they want to be with each other by this point. And which is why ultimately it's not like destiny that Geralt was sort of refuting destiny by not taking Ciri the first time or the second time. That Geralt killed Calanthi or anything like that. It's just ultimately by this time Geralt finally became honest with his feelings that he wants to meet with Ciri, and maybe fate played a hand in allowing them to meet again or something like that. But what really brought them together is the fact that Geralt wants to see Ciri.
I just hope fate didn't destroy a whole city just to make that happen.
Spoilers. Kind of did.
Sure.
Well, to be fair, Nilfgaard destroyed the city.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's
there's reasons
to reduce that simply as fate is sort of denying a lot of culpability, especially in the hands of Nilfgaard and its ruler.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I mean, I think it's very powerful how, like, the idea that the politics are ramping up, like, beyond a level that anybody has seen or is prepared for. I mean, like, Dandelion, you only really get this when you read the whole series or more of the books in the future. But, like, he throws away, Geralt's like, you have to throw away your poems. And he does. And
which I was
like,
surprised he did.
yeah,
Actually.
later Dandelion would never do that, and I think it is an indication of how terrified he is.
Yes.
And, yeah.
That's what made me go like, "Ooh, this is serious." It's like,
Yeah,
wow, he really did that.
But I also I love Yurga. Like, I love that he's, you know, you meet initially like when he's like, I'd be fine if the guy wanted to sleep with my wife. I'm like, I don't like you. But then he turns out to be a pretty nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, on the subject of flashbacks and what was, what wasn't, like, you know, it's hard to tell what was going on when and what was a flashback. I assume that the mother coming to heal him really did happen.
Yeah.
Unless you think it's his hallucination.
Well, that's what I was wondering, is because in the show it is. I believe it seems to be. So at least it seemed to me on the show that because first of all, we don't see her heal him. So we don't even know that. I mean, in the show, gloss over.
There was definitely somebody healed him. What do you think about sort of the conversation that these two, Vicenna and Geralt, actually had? I think that's a little bit open to interpretation, but I think most people agree that that's her.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it's her. This is maybe the part of the story that gets a little too lachrymose for me. Mommy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then again, you know, a lot of this is about like me. I think this final story is very much Sapkowski laying his cards on the table and being like, Geralt, you're not imagining it. Geralt is soft.
Yeah.
Like, Geralt is a soft boy, and like, this is important to know as we go forward. I mean, this is one of the few stories where he doesn't kill anyone or doesn't fight at all, really. So he has that one at the beginning.
He cut him
but
under
that's
glory.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know. It's
Really? Because I feel like in every one of these short stories, it starts off with here, let me be a witcher for a moment. And then the whole rest of the story has been like, he doesn't. He doesn't fight. He doesn't do the, monster of the week bit for at least many of the later ones. Not the very, very first couple, but like, in fact, we talked about that in the last episode, how like in Witcher, and, other than the very beginning of each story.
Yeah. I guess, I think it's the bringing back up his past is very important narratively going forward, because I think this is also the first time he really mentions where he grew, the who really trained him, right? Vesemir. Did he mention Vesemir before this story?
I think so. I recognize
I feel
the
like
name
he
when I saw
did.
it.
Yeah.
But
I feel like he did mention it, but
Okay.
not in not in depth, and not just like in passing. Like, that's something everyone knows, including the reader, and it's just there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time you really see like his relationship with Vesemir.
Yeah.
Vesemir is basically his real dad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's interesting how this story basically, it's weird that we're in a series of short stories, and this short story is almost a series of short stories, because there's all these little episodes that are completely unrelated but aren't, and we've got basically he's clearly like, this is setting the chessboard for the series. Even having not read it, I can tell that we're putting all the pieces in place and making sure we know where we are with the world, and then finally we have Ciri and Geralt getting together for good, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost like it's here's everywhere he's been, like sort of a quick look of here is Geralt's past, and then he's about to meet his future.
Yeah, this is a very, very pivotal chapter.
Right.
It transitions into the actual novel, the plot part, because after this is just plot. There's going to be a lot of continuous plot, and you better remember these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. This is.
There's definitely, like, it's a great story and it's enjoyable, but I'd say there's less maybe big themes to it than the other two in this. Like, kind of like, there definitely are character themes and like great moments, but to me it's less dense in terms of like
It's a
political statements or anything like that.
Well, I think this is first of all very personal story about Geralt himself, but also it's very, again, this is much more about setting up the plot.
Yeah.
I think that I agree. I think this story is much more about, like, it really isn't about leadership. It really isn't about, dukes and kings, and I mean, we do have a very long conversation with Calanthe, but that's actually really not about queenship or rulership. It's more it is personal, right? It's about her grandchild. And obviously she's playing kind of a joke on Geralt that he doesn't get until much later.
Yeah.
But, and yeah, really fun that he completely just assumes like this is going to be a child of destiny for me, ergo it's going to be a boy.
It's gotta be a boy.
Yeah.
Hello.
But Yennefer's like dialogue that or monologue, I guess, that she says about Beltane, about like them, about humans celebrating the regeneration of life, and like we're just sitting here like continually the same and unable to contribute to that cycle at all, and be part of it. I thought was very moving, because I think it is about, I don't know, this whole book. I think Geralt has kind of been inching toward that kind of like existential despair that Yennefer kind of puts words to in this in this section, and I think Ciri comes in just at the right time to like rescue him from that, because he's so devastated. Like he's so of course Sapkowski never puts us in his head, and he actually does this multiple times, when Geralt finds out bad news. We exclusively see it. It's honestly, sometimes it's rarely even described. It's just like, what's wrong, Geralt? And then he's like, nothing. And you're kind of left to fill in the devastation that's like left in his mind. So I think it's actually really fitting that as we are about to go into something super political and complicated, and I mean, there's so many different like angles and elements and characters and conflicts that like it's literally endless how much there is to consider politically in the coming books. And I really like that we just kind of have this moment to mostly just deal with these people as people and their connections as people, because I think honestly this is one of my favorite Geralt and Yennefer scenes. It's not the ultimate favorite, that comes in a couple books, but like they have just such a nice meeting, and they don't leave on sad terms, and they do leave on sad terms, but they aren't angry at each other, which is kind of new. And they just, I don't know, they like when he says to her like, oh, it never ended, like she's like, it's going to start again, he's like, it never ended. I find that really, really sweet, and I just really like the human parts of this story so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so clear that to him, this is an ongoing relationship that he's in. And to her, it's, excuse me, and to her, it's, well, I keep getting drawn to you, but I don't want to be, and I'm sure, having found out that their fate is not to be together probably didn't help that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but that doesn't even, like, they're kind of grappling with that too, right? Like, what does it mean? What does it mean nothing will come of it? That isn't something with a clear definition. It's just very sad, and then it ends with like a, I mean, what happens to Calanthe is like horrible, and presumably all the people that we met in Sintra, forget Duny and Pavetta, like what she says about like, how can you not believe in destiny when they died together? Something weird. Something strange there. Stay tuned. But I forgot what I was going to say because I think so much about Duny and just mentally went down a completely different path.
Right. I think what happened to Sintra is it sets up that in itself it sets up a very important theme going forward, because Nilfgaard is sort of set up as this huge boogeyman, and
we get the bad like villain and some like a consistent villain maybe at least for a time, which we haven't. We don't get that in the other stories. It's just one times.
Well, it's interesting with Nilfgaard. We do get consistent villains. They are associated with Nilfgaard. But what Nilfgaard itself comes to stand for also becomes more complicated. Yeah,
for some of us.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing I thought was interesting was the whole bit about Yennefer, the last of the wizards who died, but it wasn't. So, is that meant to be him flashing into the future, or just his own fears?
I think that's sort of exposing his own
Right. I mean, I think
insecurities and
obviously
fears.
he knows that they're not destined to be together. Maybe that's why in his mind he's going to see her dead. Or
I really believed it.
I liked it, though.
Like at least a big part of me believed it. And I was like, what? No. and then I realized this was stupid because I know from you guys that she shows up later.
I think that among the names, I think 2 names to remember are Triss Marigold and Litanade or Coral, because those 2 will actually show up. Those 2 names will show up in the future amongst that list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I another thing I found kind of interesting in terms of the way people view kind of life and its cycle in this series is that when Yurga is like, oh, well, it wouldn't have been a big deal if like, okay, well, soldiers die. Okay, well, people die, but the mages could have lived forever and they gave up that life to save us. And to me, that's like the opposite, I'm like, well, how long have they already lived? All right, move on. Like, you can't let the normal people have like a regular lifespan. And that I think it is indicative of just like there are people in this world who have rights and that are conveyed by either their abilities or society's view of their abilities or whatever that normal people don't have. And you have people like Geralt and Ciri who get really stuck between those 2 things. And a lot kind of comes out of that.
And like, how do you feel? I've had this realization recently by re-watching The Lord of the Rings, and the way I feel about elves dying is not the same as the way I feel about humans dying. And because it feels like this immense life is lost, and it feels bigger and sadder just than men dying, which is like obviously already sad. But I feel in this it's a bit of the same idea, and the sacrifice is bigger, and then so it's more notable. I don't know, but I agree. Like when you think about it deeply, it's like, well, they don't have any more rights to. I mean, it's the normal people have just as much life to live actually from their point of view, and so it's a bit weird how we or at least I feel about this, and how it's different from when I think rationally about it.
Well, that's I can't remember if it's in the Silmarillion or the proper novels for Lord of the Rings, but there's a line where an elf is, and I don't remember any details around it. I just remember the line of how elves are amazed that humans are willing to give their lives when they have so little life to give, when their lives are so short already. But I guess it's just sort of a perspective thing that, if you have centuries to live, then you have a long portion of your life where you feel like you're in the prime and you feel like you have a lot to lose, as opposed to, if you, I don't know, if you maybe only have 70 or 80 years.
Mm-hmm.
Weird to talk about. We don't know anyone who's hundreds of years old.
Or do you?
That's true. What's that book that a lot of elementary schools read? Tuck Everlasting, where it's like know what I'm talking about? It's like the family that is eternal and they have to like uproot and go live other places every couple decades.
Right.
I'm very impressed with myself that I remember the name of that book.
I did.
Probably a 1 in 100 chance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, any other thoughts overall, or on something more?
No.
We've covered it.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the end is so pure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
like
great. It's like that childish, almost that Ciri hangs on to this idea of like destiny, and he's like, that's almost irrelevant. Like, yes, that's why we're here, but like it's more than that, and it is like the real genuine bond between them. That like, I mean, Geralt is so different when he has the direction of Ciri in his life, and it's just
Dad Geralt is the best character.
Dad Geralt is the best.
Well, I mean, he's been saying in all of these little short stories, they are all, I mean, all the little sub-stories in this story, it's all, oh, it's destiny. He's going, no, we need something more. We need something more. And he found it. So it's both. There is the destiny, but we've got that little bit that pushes destiny. This is more. And it's a kind of interesting idea that there are things more important.
Yeah. I love that, actually, because especially in a fantasy series.
That's my thinking as well. It's something that takes away from whatever's happening and the feelings of the characters and what happens to them when it's all about destiny. Whereas when you can have both, like the interesting psychological things that happen because they are being like led by destiny, but also something more, something of free will and love and genuine pure feelings that it takes it to another level.
I also like the fact that they actually, after every, and I notice, Sapkowski does that a lot in these, finds was the title of the story.
Yeah.
And all through this short story and every little interlude we had, there's got to be something more, but then when he says, you're much, I like that change.
Yeah.
Little and subtle, but I liked it.
And I think it also, it speaks to kind of the way he writes, because things build, and like he is kind of, I think in this story, pretty much every interaction is very powerful and impactful in its own way. But like, I don't think that this story would be as powerful if we didn't have, the Three Jackdaws story with the dragon, which like I don't love, but it's fine, but that continual weight of things, and like the Geralt's jacket keeps coming back that he got in the story with the shapeshifter,
Yep.
And I think that, like, I mean, every time I'm a little bit like, oh my god, is this guy really a good writer? I don't know. And then something he does just kind of comes back and like really like smacks me, and it usually has to do with other things that have led up to it, and I'm like, okay, yes, fine, you're a good writer.
I'm going to make a very, very horrible anime reference here. I'm sorry. It's kind of like I used to love the TV show Sailor Moon. It's kind of like those episodes of Sailor Moon that people always say, oh, these are just monster of the day. It's not really meaningful. It doesn't matter in the main plot. You can just skip them. But ultimately they really matter because it builds the characters and it makes you care about the characters. And that's, I feel like, what those early stories are. It sets up Geralt, it sets up Yennefer, it sets up Dandelion, and going forward, you're really going to want to care about these characters and care about what's going to happen to them. Yeah.
Well, and we're so used to getting dropped into the middle of everything, right?
Yeah.
Like that is absolutely what we see in most of the stories that we read nowadays is you get dropped in the middle, like just in the lives of these people, and it's your responsibility to figure it out. Like we don't like being fed a bunch of exposition. So like here, like in these individual stories, we're dropped in the middle and we're kind of given details as we go and we have to figure it out. But they end up providing quality exposition heading into the novels proper, or the main storyline, whatever. We need to think of a catchy term for that. But
I mean, you can still like get some building the world and the characters by like growing with them, and that's what I find interesting with a lot of characters that you meet when they're quite young and they're at the beginning of the story, and so you are not dropped in the middle because you get them as they discover themselves, and it's kind of that way here too, although it's done by short stories that are really random, but you also like grow with Geralt and to like when he learns to accept whatever he's feeling, and yeah, in the end it's worth it, but I'm still not gonna say that that everything in this new light is better, because I don't really think that I would enjoy the first few stories more now that I've gotten to this point, I think they will still have
Sure.
the same flaws to me. But
No, sure.
Yeah.
And those episodes of Sailor Moon were objectively not very good, but they serve a purpose. I think is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, and you're definitely right.
Yeah. Can I just close out with a line I just find really wonderful?
Yeah.
Or
Absolutely.
a couple lines.
Sure.
Um,
I had one too, actually, Michal.
Oh, awesome. So this is one of the last conversations between Yurga and Geralt. He's Geralt. Yurga is basically offering one of his sons. And Yurga says, protecting people, saving their lives. How do you judge that? Bad or good? Those 14 on the hill, you there on that bridge. What were you doing? Good or bad? I don't know, said Geralt with an effort. I don't know, Yurga. Sometimes it seems to me that I know, and sometimes I have doubts. Would you like your son to have doubts like that? Why not? Said the merchant gravely. He might as well, for it's a human and a good thing. What? Doubts. Only evil, sir. Never has any. Yeah, I just really...
Yurga.
Deep.
Yurga gives me the feels.
Yeah.
That's super powerful, and I kind of missed it by reading fast to the end of that one. But yeah.
I had a Yurga quote as well, Michal, which was...
Oh my God, this guy.
Yeah.
We stand for Yurga.
He did.
Yurga the merchant, best character.
He said, as Geralt is wondering why Yurga helped him, Yurga says, well, what can I say? It's a base world, he finally muttered. But that's no reason for all of us to become despicable. What we need is kindness. My father taught me that, and I teach it to my sons. Feels pretty relevant in 2020.
Yeah, we need a lot more kindness.
We do. But, I mean, we also get it. We don't have enough, probably, but there's still a lot of kindness around us, at least around me, and maybe I'm fortunate, but it's like, okay, this is really away from the Witcher things, but I agree that we need more kindness, but I think it's also important to recognize that we already have a lot, and yeah.
Well, and I'll say in my mind, I think that things like justice and overall, like structuring society in ways we take care of each other, all those things fall under kindness and love in my mind too. So
absolutely, I agree.
I don't want to just throw out a trite everybody love everybody thing and that be it. But I do think there's a lot of truth to what Yurga said, and I think he would, not to project too much onto that character, but I don't think he just means I don't think he just means taking care of a sick person. I think he means kind society all around.
Yeah, generally believing the good in people. Yeah.
And I think you find it where you create it. I think this story is Yurga interpreting what Geralt does as a kindness, and he's like, well, it's my job, and he's like, no, you didn't have to do that, and then he reciprocates that with so much kindness by himself, and I mean, really, Ciri is saved by the kindness of his wife, right? Who takes in this little girl. So
yeah,
good people.
Yes.
Hopefully he doesn't meet a Martin-esque all good people just get slaughtered. And I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Save me that suffering.
That's too bad.
It's a later day. If it's a later day, I'll find out then. Well, I'm at a hard stop. I don't want to cut it off, but
it's been 2.5 hours already. I think.
Okay.
I'm ready to nap a little. Try now.
Okay. Does anyone have any other podcasts that they want to promote?
Not sure, actually.
Okay. I do know we have Abby put together a podcast for the Hunger Games prequel, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that should be coming out soon. And then that's the only one that is on my radar. Of course, we'll have follow-up to this one with Blood of Elves, which will be, who knows when. We'll see. And if there's not any others, anyone's mind. Okay. Well, this has been Vassals of Kingsgrave. Thanks to everyone that joined. We will talk about Blood of Elves here in the next few weeks. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kevin.
Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
y'all.
Good job.
Great job, first time.
Congratulations to everyone who read this far and gotten to the good stuff. I'm proud of it.
I know, right?
Yep, we're in the long haul now.
Yeah,
All right.
we are.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm I'm late for digital church, y'all. I gotta
How
go.
dare you?
Yeah, bye, Kevin. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And today we are talking about the second half, the second trio of short stories from The Sword of Destiny from the Witcher series by Adrian Sapkowski. And today I am joined by Michal.
crap. Sorry, I was in another window. Also, it's Andrzej Sapkowski.
Did I say, what did I say?
You said Adrian. It's definitely not Adrian.
You're right. Okay, let's probably try the whole thing again
Does
from
he
the
solve
top.
crimes and have a penchant for being very clean?
Is he married to a boxer, rough and tumble boxer from Philadelphia?
Yo, Adrian.
What did I just see, Adrian? Oh, Space Force. They literally named. Oh no, this is going poorly. They named Malkovich's character just so they could have a scene where Steve Carell yells Adrian.
So you're the person who's watching Space Force. I knew there was somebody.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean,
no
they're-
judgment. I'm watching Real Housewives of Johannesburg right now. So
Yeah.
Oh god,
That's a rough comparison.
that I feel like there's a lot of potential for a lot. Like, anyways. Oh man. All right, let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. Today we'll be discussing The Sword of Destiny, the second installation of Andrzej Sapkowski's Witcher series. We'll be talking about the second trio of short stories in this book before getting into the proper main story on the next cast. I am joined today, try again, because I forgot to say my name. Now I'm thinking about it.
It's okay.
You're doing well, Kevin.
We've
It's
all
all
been
fine.
there. We've all been there.
I've never done this part. So many
I
things to
stumbled
say.
over our name in my first one, so.
A couple times.
Right.
The best part is it will all die when I edit. All right,
Yep.
try again. Hello and
Oh,
welcome
Kevin,
to that.
hang on. No, sorry. You're leaving Adrian Sapkowski in the outtakes. I'm
Yes,
sorry. That
that's-
has to be in there. I insist.
That's
Okay.
what the joy of after.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna go on my phone and make a list of things to hit because I'm like, all right, VOK,
I always
Kevin.
script the shows that I'm hosting. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, first you say that, then you don't forget the people, you don't forget yourself.
Mhm.
yeah, literally anyone who's seen my reread notes. I mean, I literally write it out, Kevin. There's no shame in doing it.
Yeah.
I write my intro and my ending. Otherwise, you just forget stuff.
Right. I usually.
And that's after however many of these I posted. So,
Okay.
Have you done 100 yet?
well, as in hosting,
Yeah.
I'm
You
not
must be.
sure.
I mean, you've done a lot of them.
Must have.
Close.
I've definitely been on that level, but I wasn't
still.
on any of the Game of Thrones ones, so that takes out a bit.
That's true.
Yeah, but like, how many of the reread episodes are there? And you must have hosted like at least a third of that.
Yeah, probably.
No, we're at 108 or 10 or so.
Although we do know, of course, that Matt was on more than me. So.
Right.
But
Really?
he
Wow.
hasn't
By like
hosted
one. It
any.
was like by one, wasn't it?
Okay. Deep breath and go. Hello and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. I'm creepy NuncleKevin.
I knew you were gonna
Yeah,
say
you're
that.
no longer creepy now, aren't you?
I was waiting for that.
All right, try again. God, all in my own head. This is why I could never be an actor. Hello and welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave. I'm Kevin, NuncleKevin on the forums, and today we'll be discussing The Sword of Destiny, the second installment in Adrian